Welcome to the Slee Off-Road video series. Today we're here to talk about bump stops. In particular, we're talking about Durobumps. Durobumps makes a replacement bump stop for all your late model Toyota and Lexus vehicles. Durobumps is making bump stops for quite some time. Very high quality, made in the USA, US made rubber. Some of the unique things with Durobumps, Slee Off-Road has been working with Durobumps for about a year to complete their Land Cruiser applications. So those are new to Durobumps, new to Slee Off-Road. Slee Off-Road is carrying the entire line of Durobumps to, again, fit all of your late model Lexus, late model 4Runner, late model Land Cruiser needs. But let's talk about some of the differences of the Durobumps compared to some of the other products that are out there. We all have factory rubber bump stops on our vehicles. These bump stops are designed by Toyota as a safety feature only. The safety feature, once your axle connects to your factory bump stops, it's pretty firm, it's pretty harsh. It's really there to save things like your drive lines, save things like your factory shocks to not overcompress them. But unfortunately, leave a lot to be desired when it comes to comfort and control. Durobumps, much like factory, is made out of rubber. The difference with Durobumps is they have a multitude of different durometers within the bump stop. As the bump stop contacts the axle, it's much softer, and as the bump stop compresses, it'll continuously get firmer. However, once it gets towards the last zone or the most firm durometer, it is guaranteed that the Durobump will not over-compress or compress further than what the factory bump stop is. The Durobump bump stops can be used in many of the same applications and same environments as the factory Toyota bump stops because they don't compress any further. However, they do engage onto the axle or engage in the travel much sooner than the factory bump stops. So multiple durometers, compressed to the same as factory bump stop in most applications, as well as being 100% US made and 100% rubber. Makes them very unique. One of the things that we did a little different for the Land Cruiser applications is on the Land Cruiser. We're going to start with the 80 series. Again, this is an example of an 80 series bump stop. You may replace your bump stops because either one, you want to get the improvement of the Durobump, or two, in many cases on an older vehicle, the rubber has become dislodged and it's now missing. You can see here, there's just a metal bracket left, no rubber left, or in this case, it's starting to delaminate. We see this very common on a truck that's 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years old. So you may just be replacing these as a service item or as an upgrade. On the 80 series Land Cruiser application seen here, this would be an example of the height that you would expect to replace a factory bump stop. You can see where it's a little bit longer, it's going to engage sooner. In addition to the 80 series stock replacements, these can be used with stock height suspension, stock length shocks, and it's also a very good fit when used with the Old Man Emu 2.5-inch Slee Off-Road 2.5-inch suspension. Those shocks are intended to compress to the factory bump stop length. Another thing that's very popular with 80 series when lifting them 3 inches or above, this would be your J-spring lifts, your Slee Off-Road 4-inch lifts, your Slee Off-Road 6-inch lifts. It's common to add a spacer to the factory bump stop, which Slee Off-Road offers, great product for us, to allow that bump stop to be engaged sooner, which protects a longer travel shock. Working with Durobumps, we have created a just direct replacement. This essentially has a 2-inch spacer built into the bottom of the bump stop, so there's no longer a need to add a spacer to the bottom. So 3-inch lift and plus, 3, 4, 6, this is a great product. Direct replacement without any additional spacers added at the bottom. Very cool. Still talking about the 80 series, another neat thing, small little piece of information, 91 through 94 Land Cruisers had a factory Toyota bump stop mounted to the frame rails in the front, in addition to the bump stops that we're all familiar with inside the coil springs. 95 through 97, Toyota has eliminated those bump stops on the frame rail. However, the mounting hardware is still there, the mounting points in the frame. So we have created a new bump stop that will install on all 91 through 97 front frame rail mounts. This can be an option when adding a bump stop when you never had one, or similar to what we talked about before, just an improvement. Much like the rear, we have an extended length. These also have a 2-inch bump stop spacer built into the bump stop product itself. With the 80 series, when extending the bump stop inside the coil spring, we all know depending on what control arms you have, what caster angle you have, you can get some rubbing as you extend that factory bump stop within the coil spring. This would be an alternative option to the internal coil spring bump stop extension, and now we can bump stop that on the frame. It's a little more accurate place to limit the up travel as well. So 80 series, we have 2 options for the rear, up to 2.5 inches, 3+, Same thing in the front, up to 2.5 inches, and 3+ in the front as well. So moving on from the 80 series Land Cruiser onto the 100 series Land Cruiser. Little differences, obviously independent suspension in the front, however the rear suspension is very similar. The Land Cruiser rear bump stops that fit the 80 series are also applicable for the 100 series. There's a direct crossover. So we have the same applications on the rear of the 100 series, a stock height to 2.5-inch rear bump stop installation. This works for a multitude of the suspension packages out there, Slee off-road suspension, Old Man Emu suspension, and etc. We do offer an extended version for the 100 series. Now, it's a very small application that you would need that. If you are someone who does want to play around with the L-shocks on the 100 series, which was kind of an older thing that was done on some of the forums, you can use the 80 series extended. However, in 99% of the time, we're going to have one application for the 100 series. On the front of the 100 series Land Cruiser, obviously being independent suspension, we do offer a bump stop for that as well. It's a little different shape, has a single mounting hole, but much like on the rear bump stops, this is made out of 100% rubber. This has multiple durometers in it, and it's intended to be more comfortable and more controlled as you engage the bump stop through the travel. Moving on to the 200 series Land Cruiser. 200 series Land Cruiser actually uses the same front bump stop as the 100. In many independent suspension applications, Toyota may have put 2 bump stops per A-arm or per corner. On the Durobump application, you are only replacing one of those 2, as that one is doing all the job that you need and 2 would be excessive. They can be physically installed in 2 locations should you have a unique application, but the idea is to use one for most options. On the rear of the 200 series, this is a unique to 200 only bump stop. You'll see here that there's been some design on the 200 application that has relocated the bump stop pad in correlation with the mounting holes. Anywhere that this was a benefit along the Toyota and Lexus line, this has been capitalized on, but this has been relocated. But other than that, same idea. This is what a factory 200 series bump stop looks like. Same idea. You can see a little bit longer, engages sooner, multiple durometers, going to be a little softer initially. So that covers the specific applications of the Land Cruisers. You can see here, this is the rear bump stop as an example for the rear of the 4Runner, the GX, the FJ Cruiser, much like the 200 series. This is a corrected bump stop strike pad that centers more at the rear axle at the new location. Here is an example of the Tacoma rear bump stops. Tacoma rear bump stops, being that it's a leaf spring suspension, they do include metal pads that locate under the U-bolts just like the factory, and then the 100% rubber bump stops mount to those pads. Take a look at the Slee Off-Road website. We have all these applications covered in there. If you have any questions that weren't covered in this video, please give us a call. Our sales staff is happy to answer those questions for you. And you'll also see if you're buying a new suspension package from Slee Off-Road, these options are included as a choice for you within that suspension package to kind of make things a little bit easier. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back soon.